Um, what if the most terrifying alien invasion in human history didn't look, like flying saucers dropping out of the sky?
Right, no laser beams blasting cities.
Exactly. What if instead the end of the world as we know it looked exactly like a pristine, untouched, impossibly beautiful nature reserve?
It's a pretty wild thought experiment.
It really is. I mean, imagine you are standing at the edge of this wilderness. The air is so incredibly fresh, it almost buffets your lungs. It's just sharp and clean.
Yeah, like you're in a paradise.
Yeah. You look out and you see this dense black pine forest, and it gives way to a cypress swamp, which then transitions into salt flats, and finally a glittering, untouched beach.
It sounds absolutely perfect.
The thing is, this landscape has been completely cut off from the rest of the world for 30 years, and there's a secret hiding in the reeds and the black water.
A very dark secret.
Right. It doesn't want to destroy humanity. It just wants to digest it. Slowly, quietly, cell by cell, it is terraforming anyone who dares to step inside.
Because it's an environment that actively reads you, breaks you down, and repurposes you.
Yeah.
The very concept of an invasion is just turned on its head here because there's no malice. There is only a biological imperative to assimilate.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping across the invisible border into Area X.
I'm really excited for this one.
Same here. Our source material for this journey is the brilliant and honestly deeply unsettling science fiction novel Annihilation by Jeff VanderMeer.
Such a fantastic book.
It really is. Our mission today is to shadow the 12th expedition into Area X, and we're going to unpack the psychological horror, the biological anomalies, and those profound, terrifying questions about human perception when we encounter an ecosystem that completely refuses to be categorized.
And we really need to emphasize who is on this team.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are following a team of 4 women, highly trained scientists and military personnel. There's a biologist who serves as our narrator, a psychologist who is the leader, a surveyor, and an anthropologist.
But before they even take a single step into the swamp, there is a glaring, massive red flag about how this whole operation is being run.
Oh, absolutely. They have no names.
None at all. They have been systematically stripped of their identities during months of grueling, almost punitive training.
Yeah, they are only referred to by their functions: the biologist, the surveyor, the anthropologist.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at their loadout, I mean, it gets even stranger.
Oh, the gear is ridiculous.
Right. They are equipped entirely with obsolete analog technology. No cell phones, no computers, no GPS.
Just heavy, old-school rifles cobbled together from 30-year-old parts.
Yeah. And hanging from their belts, they each have this little black box that is supposedly going to glow red if they are in danger.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. As a reader or a listener, your first instinct is to think the clandestine government agency sending them in the Southern Reach, right, is being incredibly cruel and backward.
Which they are.
Sure. But if you know that you are sending a team into an alien landscape that literally feeds on human panic, bias, and complex data, isn't stripping their identities and forcing them to use analog gear actually the most rational scientific failsafe you have?
That's a really interesting point.
I mean, it feels cold-blooded, but isn't the Southern Reach making the right call to prevent immediate contamination?
Well, that is exactly the justification the Southern Reach uses, and honestly, it makes logical sense on a surface level.
Right.
They are terrified of technological and psychological contamination. They know from previous disastrous expeditions that modern technology is either rendered utterly useless or actively co-opted by whatever is inside Area X.
Oh, wow. So like a smartphone isn't just a communication device.
Exactly. It's a tracking beacon for an intelligence we don't understand. So the Southern Reach tries to create a vacuum.
By taking away their names.
Yes. By removing human names, they are trying to remove human ego and bias. They want this team to function as a blind, deaf, purely analog probe.
Okay, I get that.
The theory is that if you don't give Area X any complex human data to latch onto, maybe you can slip in undetected.
But it's a flawed premise, isn't it? Because you can't actually strip a human being of their humanity just by taking away their name tag.
No, you really can't.
It's like sending astronauts into deep space, terrified that they might suffer a psychological break, so you intentionally outfit their capsule with a fake dashboard of blinking lights just to give them something to look at.
That is a perfect analogy.
Which brings us right to those black boxes on their belts.
Yeah.
Because the biologist, who is highly observant, realizes almost immediately that those boxes measure absolutely nothing.
Yeah, they're completely empty inside.
Right. They have no internal mechanisms for detecting radiation or spores or anomalies. They are literal placebos.
What's fascinating here is that this reveals the fatal flaw in the Southern Reach's methodology.
How so?
They're relying on deception rather than preparation. The placebo black boxes are designed to give the team a false sense of security, an illusion of control.
But when you build an expedition on a foundation of lies, you are sending people into a psychologically fractured state before they even cross the border.
Exactly. The Southern Reach isn't protecting the team from Area X. They are protecting their own bureaucratic models from the unpredictable nature of human terror.
So we have this team completely isolated, stripped of their names, carrying fake hazard detectors, and they finally cross the border into Area X.
And they cross under hypnosis, by the way.
Yes. Induced by the psychologist to prevent them from losing their minds right at the threshold.
Which is terrifying in its own right.
They wake up inside, they hike for 4 days, and they set up base camp. And the environment they find themselves in is stunning.
It really is.
It's a transitional ecosystem. So in the space of just a few miles, you move from dense pine forest to cypress swamp to salt marsh to beach.
Teeming with life.
Yeah, warblers, fiddler crabs, otters, deer.
Yeah.
But human civilization has been entirely erased.
Reduced to just rotting cabins with sunken roofs and rusted wagon wheels half buried in the dirt.
Now, for a biologist, a transitional ecosystem is usually a wonderland of biodiversity.
Oh, absolutely.
But the biologist notes this heavy, oppressive desolation hanging over the landscape. She makes a profound observation early on, actually.
What does she say?
She says, when you find beauty in desolation, it changes something inside you. The desolation itself acts as a colonizing force.
That's so eerie.
It's not just a physical space. It's an atmospheric weight that begins to press down on the psyche.
And it doesn't take long for that weight to manifest in terrifying ways through the local wildlife.
Right, the boar.
Yes. While hiking to the camp, the team is suddenly charged by an enormous wild boar.
But it's not normal.
No. When the biologist looks at the animal through her binoculars, she doesn't see a regular, aggressive pig. She sees a face contorted with a startling expression of extreme inner torment.
Inner torment. In a pig.
Yeah. She describes it as looking as though its head was being willfully pulled by an invisible bridle. It's not acting on animal instinct.
There is a spark in its eyes that is deeply, unnervingly wrong.
We need to look at the mechanics of what the biologist is observing here. Animals operate on instinct, right? Environmental pressure, basic survival drives.
Yeah, fight or flight.
Exactly. Pain or fear in an animal usually manifests as panic or aggression. But inner torment is a complex, almost uniquely human emotional state.
Because it implies a tragic awareness of one's own condition.
Right. The biologist is seeing an animal that appears to be trapped in a state of existential suffering.
And if a pig with existential dread isn't bad enough, dusk falls.
This part always gets to me.
From the reeds in the salt marshes, they hear this low, powerful moaning. It's a sound that seems to vibrate through the black water itself.
And the terrifying part is that it sounds human.
It doesn't sound like a predator hunting. It sounds like profound, inescapable grief.
This is where we have to introduce the concept of biological repurposed grief.
Repurposed grief.
Yeah. We usually think of ecosystems recycling physical matter, right? Carbon, nitrogen, water.
Sure, a dead tree becomes soil, which grows a new tree.
Exactly. But Area X seems to be recycling emotional states.
Oh, wow.
If that moaning creature in the reeds is a product of Area X, then the ecosystem is using human sorrow as environmental ambiance.
It's as if the landscape has recorded the trauma of previous expeditions
Yeah.
and is playing it back on a loop.
Built right into the very biology of the fauna.
It's a landscape that actively weaponizes your own empathy against you.
It really is.
But the team can't even properly analyze these anomalies because they are actively being sabotaged from within.
By their own leader.
Right. The psychologist is constantly, covertly hypnotizing them, and the biologist figures this out quickly.
She's sharp.
Very. The psychologist will casually drop a phrase like consolidation of authority, and suddenly the team feels calm, their anxieties vanish, and they completely forget whatever troubling conversation they were just having.
The hypnosis is the ultimate manifestation of the Southern Reach's desperate need for control. What's fascinating here is the theme of maps versus territories. It's a classic philosophical concept, the idea that the abstraction of a thing is not the thing itself.
Right, the map is not the land.
Exactly. The Southern Reach spent months drilling the team on highly specific, curated maps of Area X. Memorize the distances, memorize the topography.
But this isn't for navigation, is it?
No, it's a psychological blinder.
It's like staring at your GPS screen so intensely that you drive your car straight off a bridge into a lake.
That's exactly it.
You are so committed to the digital line on the screen that you ignore the reality outside your windshield.
Precisely. By forcing the team to obsess over the map and using hypnosis to enforce that obsession, the Southern Reach prevents them from asking the existential questions.
Because if you are entirely focused on the geometry of the paper in front of you, you don't look up and ask, why are we really here?
Or, what happens if we walk off the edge of this map? The map is a cage designed to keep their minds small and manageable.
But the problem with driving your car into a lake is that eventually the water starts pouring in.
And that illusion shatters.
Right, that carefully constructed false reality shatters on day 4. The team is walking through the pine forest just before it turns into the swamp, and they stumble upon something massive.
Something that definitely isn't on the map.
A circular block of stone and ground-up seashells, 60 feet in diameter, raised just 8 inches off the ground.
Yeah.
And in the center, a rectangular opening reveals a spiral staircase descending deep into the dark earth. This structure simply does not exist on any of their heavily memorized maps.
The immediate reactions of the team members tell you everything you need to know about their conditioning.
The surveyor's reaction is great.
The surveyor looks at her paper map, looks at the massive stone structure, and literally says, "This is impossible."
And the psychologist?
The psychologist immediately goes into damage control. She tries to minimize the psychological impact by focusing entirely on its mundane physical measurements.
Right, its diameter, the composition of the stone.
Yeah, she insists on calling it a tunnel.
But the biologist refuses to call it a tunnel. Even though it is a hole in the ground descending into the earth, the word tower forces itself into her mind.
Which is such a strange choice of words.
She says it exerts a presence, manifesting like a low-grade fever pressing down on all of them. Why is she so insistent on the word tower?
It is a brilliant inversion of architectural psychology. Why do humans build towers?
To go up, I guess. To reach the heavens.
Right, to assert dominance over the landscape to be seen. A tower is the ultimate symbol of human ego and achievement.
And a tunnel.
A tunnel goes down, it hides in the dark, it is utilitarian.
Oh, I see.
By intuitively calling it a tower, the biologist is recognizing its power, its scale, and its organic intent.
She realizes that this structure is not a mere hole in the ground. It is a monument.
It just happens to be a monument built by an intelligence that naturally inverts human logic.
The logic of an alien architect. So despite the surveyor's panic and the psychologist's attempts to minimize it, they have to explore it. That's their job.
They have no choice.
The surveyor takes the lead, backing down the narrow stone steps with her assault rifle raised. The biologist and the anthropologist follow her down into the dark.
And the psychologist.
She stays up top to stand guard, or so she claims. As they descend, the air gets cooler. The sounds of the forest above are muffled.
It gets really claustrophobic.
Yeah. They reach a landing about 20 feet down. The walls are blank, off-white stone. But then they see an archway leading further down.
And this is where the true biological nightmare of Area X reveals itself.
Because the walls of the stairwell are not blank. As they shine their flashlights down, they see something growing on the stone.
It's so creepy.
At about shoulder height, progressing down into the spiraling darkness, the biologist sees what she initially thinks are dimly sparkling green vines.
But they aren't vines.
No. As she steps closer, the shape of the vines snaps into focus. They are words.
Cursive script.
Yeah. Cursive script, with the letters raised about 6 inches off the wall, growing right out of the structure.
And what does it say?
She reads the beginning of the sentence aloud, and it sounds like twisted scripture, like a biological Old Testament.
Right.
It says, "Where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead to share with the worms."
The content of the words is deeply unsettling, but the physical composition of the letters is where the true horror lies.
They aren't carved into the stone.
No, they aren't painted on either.
The biologist gets right up to the wall, bringing her face inches away from the text. She sees that the letters are actually made of rich green, fern-like fruiting bodies.
It's a highly complex type of fungi.
And it smells intensely of loamy soil and rotting honey.
Such a specific, sickly, sweet smell.
Right. And nestled inside the green foliage of the letters are these tiny, translucent, hand-shaped creatures with golden nodules on their fingertips.
The biologist is fascinated.
She leans in even closer. She admits later that she acted like a complete fool, abandoning every ounce of her survival training. The airflow from her breath disturbs one of the golden nodules in the letter W.
And it bursts.
A tiny, concentrated spray of golden spores spews directly into her nose.
Straight into her respiratory system.
She inhales them deeply. She feels an immediate pinprick of escalation in that cloying smell of rotting honey. And then she steps back.
She has to be terrified.
She is unnerved.
Yeah.
But she looks at her team, and she doesn't say a word about what just happened.
Nothing.
Nothing. She just says the letters are made from fruiting bodies. She actively hides the infection from the surveyor and the anthropologist.
That is wild.
Now put yourself in her shoes. You are in an alien environment. You just inhaled a lungful of unknown glowing fungal spores from a wall of flesh that is writing creepy poetry.
Right.
Why on earth wouldn't your first instinct be to scream for a medic? Is she just a fatally curious scientist, or is the infection already taking the wheel?
It is almost certainly the latter. We have to look at real-world neuroparasitology to understand what is happening here.
Neuroparasitology.
Yeah. Think about the Ophiocordyceps fungus.
Oh, this zombie ant fungus.
Exactly. It infects ants, takes over their nervous systems, and physically compels them to climb high up on a plant before killing them to burst and spread more spores.
Right.
Or look at Toxoplasma gondii, a parasite that infects mice and literally rewires their brains to remove their innate fear of cats.
So the mouse gets eaten and the parasite can reproduce in the cat's gut.
Yes. The spores the biologist inhaled are likely acting on a similar, though infinitely more complex, mechanism.
So the spores are actively suppressing her panic response.
Exactly. The biologist is already a deeply introverted person who prefers the company of tide pools to other human beings. The spores lash onto that existing personality trait and amplify it.
Oh, that makes sense.
She experiences a profound, unnatural calm. The text notes that the phrases from the wall were already infiltrating my mind in unexpected ways, finding fertile ground.
Wow.
She doesn't want the others to panic, yes, but more importantly, she feels a sudden, intense possessiveness over the experience. The alien biology is chemically isolating her from her own species.
But this is where VanderMeer flips the script on us.
Totally.
You would expect that inhaling an alien spore would make you lose your mind. You'd expect hallucinations, delirium, madness, but the infection does the exact opposite.
It doesn't drug her, it wakes her up.
Yeah, the biologist starts experiencing this internal sensation that she calls the brightness. It's a heightened state of awareness, a glowing clarity in her mind.
And the profound irony of this alien infection is that the brightness literally burns away the hypnotic conditioning the psychologist has buried in her brain.
The alien parasite cures the human brainwashing.
This is a crucial paradigm-shifting moment. The human-imposed hypnosis was a veil, a filter designed to keep the team docile and oblivious to the true nature of their surroundings.
And the spores strip that veil away.
Yes. And because of that, the biologist gains a terrifyingly objective view of Area X.
She sees the reality of the situation. The next time they go down into the tower, she looks at the walls, and the brightness allows her to perceive what is actually there.
Which is not stone.
No. The tower is breathing. She reaches out, touches the wall, and feels the distinct rhythmic echo of a heartbeat. She realizes the walls aren't made of stone and coquina at all.
They are living tissue.
Yeah. A silvery white phosphorescence is rising off them in the dark. The tower isn't a building. It's a massive subterranean biological entity.
They are descending into the gullet of an organism.
But the surveyor, who is entirely uninfected, is standing right next to her. The biologist grabs the surveyor's hand and forces it flat against the breathing, fleshy wall.
And asks what she feels.
Right, can you feel that? She asks. And the surveyor feels absolutely nothing. She just feels cold stone. She looks at the biologist like she has completely lost her mind.
This encapsulates the tragedy of the expedition.
How so?
The uninfected humans are trapped in an illusion partly constructed by the mimicry of Area X, but largely enforced by humanity's own systems of control.
The hypnosis.
Right. The infected biologist is the only one perceiving base reality. Area X doesn't even need to lie to the surveyor and the anthropologist. The Southern Reach's hypnosis is doing the lying for them perfectly well.
The brightness acts as a biological override to human bureaucracy.
Exactly.
With her mind finally her own, The biologist begins to see the massive, glaring cracks in the foundation of the expedition. But the true, crushing scale of the Southern Reach's deception isn't hidden down in the dark of the tower.
No, it's somewhere else.
It's waiting for her miles away, on the coast, at the lighthouse.
The discovery of the tower acts as a catalyst for the complete collapse of the team's cohesion.
Everything just falls apart.
The illusions cannot hold up under the immense psychological pressure of the anomalous environment. The breaking of the fellowship happens rapidly and violently.
It's a total catastrophic collapse. They wake up the next morning at base camp, and the anthropologist is gone. Missing.
Just vanish.
The biologist and the surveyor immediately suspect she went back to the tower, so they grab their gear and descend the spiral stairs once again.
And what they find is horrible.
It is the stuff of absolute nightmares. The anthropologist is dead on the stairs, but the state of her body defies explanation.
It's gruesome.
Her jaw is completely broken, wrenched open in a single act of impossible brutality.
Yeah.
A mound of glowing green ash is spilling out of her open mouth onto her chest.
Wow.
Her skin is covered in horrific burn marks,
Yeah.
and her legs look as though they've been half melted into the stone steps.
It is a shocking escalation of violence. But the biologist, retaining her analytical mind despite the horror, pieces together the sequence of events.
She looks at the tracks, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
she examines the tracks in the slime on the stairs. The anthropologist didn't just wander down there out of curiosity and stumble upon the entity writing the words. The entity the biologist has named the crawler.
No, the tracks indicate she was forced.
She was marching down the stairs in a rigid, unnatural gait.
She was hypnotized.
Exactly.
The biologist realizes that the psychologist, the night before, must have used a hypnotic trigger to force the anthropologist to march down into the tower alone in the dark.
But why?
Because the psychologist was impatient. She needed data.
Yeah.
She needed to know what was at the bottom of the stairs, and she wasn't willing to risk herself.
So she used her.
Right. She used a human being as a disposable, fleshy probe. She marched the anthropologist straight into the mouth of a god.
It is a chilling, damning indictment of scientific authority.
It really is.
The psychologist, acting as the proxy for the Southern Reach, treats a human life as entirely expendable for the sake of gathering intel.
But Area X doesn't play by those rules.
No. The ecosystem of Area X is highly reactive. It does not tolerate that kind of blunt, forceful, mechanistic intrusion. Whatever the crawler is, when it was confronted by a hypnotized, unnatural human presence, it destroyed her instantly and violently.
This leaves the biologist and the surveyor in a state of absolute paralyzing paranoia. They don't trust each other, and they certainly don't trust the psychologist.
Who has conveniently vanished from base camp.
Right, so the biologist decides she is done playing games. She needs answers, and she believes those answers are hidden at the lighthouse, which seems to be the focal point of the region.
So she goes alone.
She leaves the heavily armed surveyor at base camp and heads toward the coast alone.
This solo journey to the lighthouse is a masterstroke of atmospheric storytelling.
It's beautifully written.
The biologist is walking through that beautiful transitional ecosystem, but she is now experiencing it through the hyper-elevated, almost hallucinatory senses granted by the brightness.
Everything is magnified.
Every color is vibrating, every sound is magnified. It is an aria of sensory ecstasy, but it is deeply isolating.
Along the way, she walks through the ruins of an old village, and the brightness allows her to see exactly what happened there years ago.
She finds a massacre scene.
Yes, preserved in the rotting wood. Bullet holes grouped in tight clusters, massive bloodstains soaked deep into the floorboards, overturned tables.
It's brutal.
It's a grim, silent reminder that violence and paranoia have been the default human response to this place for a very long time. But she pushes on, breaking through the tree line, and finally reaches the lighthouse standing tall over the black water.
And goes inside.
She walks past fresh blood spatter on the spiraling iron stairs, climbs all the way to the top room, and she finds something that completely upends everything she thought she knew.
The discovery in the lighthouse completely recontextualizes the entire universe of the novel. It is the moment the floor falls out from under you.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. She is searching the dusty, debris-filled room at the top of the lighthouse, and she notices a hidden trap door built seamlessly into the floorboards.
She pries it open.
Right, she clicks on her heavy analog flashlight, shines the beam down into the dark space below, and the breath is just knocked out of her lungs. It is a massive, rotting pile of journals.
Hundreds and hundreds of them.
A mound of notebooks 12 feet high and 16 feet across. And every single one of them has the exact same waterproof black and white cover as the journals she's currently carrying in her pack.
It's staggering.
Let the sheer scale of that sink in. They were explicitly told they were the 12th expedition. 12.
Which would mean maybe 50 people total?
Right. But this mountain of composting paper proves there have been dozens, perhaps hundreds of expeditions.
It changes everything.
The Southern Reach has been lying to them from the very first day of training. They haven't been sending carefully planned elite teams to study an anomaly. They have just been feeding thousands of people into a meat grinder over and over and over again.
And we have to look at the profound thematic tragedy of the journals themselves.
What do you mean?
When the biologist climbs down into that hiding space, she wades into the pile. She notes that the notebooks at the very bottom of the mound are literally turning into soil.
Decompose.
Beetles and silverfish are tunneling through the damp paper. The ink is bleeding away. The bindings are rotting into mulch. As the biologist observes, the history of exploring Area X could be said to be turning into Area X.
That concept is so heavy, the history of the exploration is becoming the dirt of the environment itself.
It perfectly highlights the absolute futility of human bureaucratic systems in the face of the sublime.
Right, the paperwork.
Think about the psychological phenomenon of bureaucratic obsession. The Southern Reach doesn't know how to stop Area X, so they default to what bureaucracies do best. They generate paperwork.
They demand data.
They send people in with standardized journals, demanding maximum context, demanding that the unknown be categorized, measured, and filed away. They are trying to conquer an alien god through clerical work.
That's a great way to put it.
But the unknown doesn't care about our filing systems. It just takes all our desperate data, breaks it down, and uses it as compost. The hubris of human science is literally rotting into dirt.
And she starts pulling journals out of the pile and reading them. The entries are horrific.
It's just awful stuff.
They describe unspeakable acts, sudden flare-ups of violence among team members, horrible manifestations in the woods. They describe being attacked by things coming out of the sea long before the invisible border even existed.
It's a cycle.
It's an endless, crushing cycle of people wandering into this beautiful place, losing their minds to paranoia, slaughtering each other, and leaving their little black and white notebooks behind to rot in the dark.
But the biologist isn't the only member of her expedition who made it to the lighthouse.
No, she isn't.
As she climbs out of that horrifying trapdoor, leaving the crushing weight of that secret history behind her, she steps out of the lighthouse and onto the glittering beach.
And there, lying in the sand, she finds the architect of her immediate suffering.
She finds the psychologist.
Broken, bleeding, and dying. She had thrown herself off the top of the lighthouse.
Which brings us to the core tension of the narrative, the themes of dissolution and survival. What actually happens to the human mind and the physical human body when the illusion of reality, the map you've been clinging to, is completely and violently shattered?
What happens isn't pretty. The psychologist is in terrible shape from the fall. But the most shocking thing isn't the broken bones, it's the wound on her shoulder.
It's infected.
The biologist cuts away the psychologist's ruined shirt and sees that her flesh has been violently colonized by this glowing, fibrous green-gold fuzz.
She is mutating rapidly.
The crawler in the tower didn't just kill the anthropologist, it touched the psychologist too. And now the psychologist is transforming into something else right there on the beach.
And in her final moments of delirium, the psychologist is absolutely terrified, not of dying, but of the biologist.
Yeah, she calls her a flame.
She looks at the biologist and says, "You are a flame, scorching my gaze, a slow burning flame."
Because of the spores, the biologist is literally glowing.
She is phosphorescent to anyone who can perceive the true nature of Area X. The psychologist is so terrified of this glowing, mutating woman standing over her that she tries to use her ultimate fail-safe weapon.
She looks the biologist in the eye and screams the word annihilation at her. Annihilation! Annihilation!
Which the biologist later discovers, by finding a hidden note tucked into the psychologist's boot, was a deeply buried hypnotic trigger meant to induce immediate, involuntary suicide.
Think about how utterly cold-blooded and cynical that is.
It's horrific.
The Southern Reach actually programmed a self-destruct button into the brains of their own scientists. If they become compromised, if they see too much, just say a magic word and they will instantly kill themselves.
But it doesn't work.
That's the most satisfying part of this horrific encounter. The trigger fails completely because the biologist's brightness, the alien fungal infection, makes her entirely immune to the human hypnosis.
The alien parasite protects its host from human bureaucracy.
It's poetic justice. Before she finally succumbs to her wounds, the psychologist gives up one last massive piece of intelligence.
She admits that the invisible border surrounding Area X isn't a static wall.
Right. It is slowly, inexorably advancing. A little bit more every year, it creeps further into the human world.
It's an incredibly ominous detail that shifts the stakes of the entire narrative. This isn't just a contained, weird anomaly in a swamp. It is a slow-moving, terraforming invasion.
So the biologist leaves her there to die on the beach, which is what the psychologist begs for, utterly terrified of being moved or buried by whatever's happening to her body.
And she heads back.
The biologist turns around and starts the long, dark trek back to base camp. And this trek is a pure survival nightmare.
The sun goes down.
She's running through the reeds and she hears that moaning creature tracking her in the dark. And as she's fleeing, she finds something horrifying on the trail.
The mask.
She finds a molted mask of a human face. It's discarded on the ground, thick and leathery, like the empty shell of a horseshoe crab, but it is undeniably human skin.
And she recognizes it.
She had studied footage of the previous expeditions. The face belonged to the psychologist of the 11th expedition.
It is deeply horrifying, but to the biologist, it is also hard biological evidence. It confirms our theory about repurposed grief.
Oh, right.
That moaning creature in the reeds used to be a human being. It was the psychologist from the last team. And over the course of a year, the environment didn't just kill him, it caused him to literally molt his humanity entirely, leaving his face behind as he transformed into a monster of pure sorrow.
She manages to evade the creature and makes it back to base camp. But the nightmare is far from over.
Because the surveyor is waiting.
A surveyor is waiting for her in the trees. And the surveyor has completely lost her mind to paranoia. She has destroyed all of their scientific equipment, slashed their tents to ribbons, and set up a heavily armed ambush.
A deadly, tense game of cat and mouse ensues on the dark edge of the swamp.
And here we see the brutal, philosophical irony of their entire situation play out in real time. Look at the contrast.
It's striking.
The biologist is the one who is literally infected by an alien spore. Her internal organs are changing. Her skin is giving off a green glow. Her senses are hyper-elevated. She is actively mutating into a part of the ecosystem.
Yet she is the most calm, rational, and collected person left alive.
Meanwhile, the normal, uninfected humans, the psychologist, the surveyor, completely lose their minds when faced with the inexplicable.
It heavily implies that clinging desperately to human definitions of sanity, geometry, and control in an environment that defies all of them is what actually drives you mad.
The surveyor's rigid military mindset just breaks.
The biologist survives because she abandons her human rigidity and adapts. In the shootout in the swamp, the brightness grants the biologist enhanced hearing and reflexes.
She can literally hear the surveyor's sweat dripping onto a leaf.
Wow.
She anticipates the surveyor's ambush, outmaneuvers her, and shoots her dead.
But the biologist doesn't walk away unscathed.
No, she is badly wounded in the firefight, taking a bullet to the shoulder and another grazing her side. She is bleeding out in the swamp.
And this raises an incredibly important question. What does survival even mean when your own body is turning against you?
Because as she is lying there bleeding in the mud, she realizes something absolutely incredible about the brightness. The alien cells inside her react to the trauma.
They rush to the bullet wounds to heal them.
The agonizing pain of the gunshot is rapidly replaced by a bizarre sensation of tiny animals squirming inside her flesh, knitting the tissue back together.
But in that moment of healing, she realizes something else.
What's that?
The brightness had been slowly, quietly taking over her mind, erasing her human consciousness. It is only because her body suffered a massive, catastrophic physical trauma that the brightness was distracted.
Oh, I see.
It was forced to focus entirely on repairing her physical body rather than assimilating her mind.
So she figures out a horrific biological loophole. Yeah. To halt the alien takeover of her brain, she essentially has to keep herself severely wounded.
She has to constantly shock her own nervous system.
With physical pain, to remind the alien cells to focus on healing rather than rewriting her. What does it mean for your humanity when you have to literally torture yourself just to stay human?
It perfectly illustrates the central theme of assimilation versus destruction. Area X doesn't want to kill the biologist. Death is a waste of material.
It wants to absorb her.
It wants to use her unique biological makeup. Just as it used the 11th expedition's psychologist to create the moaning creature, it has plans for the biologist. In Area X, death isn't an end. It is simply a repurposing of raw materials.
Which is such a deeply unsettling existential concept.
Yeah.
But what does that assimilation actually look like? If you are repurposed, what do you become?
That's the big question.
To understand the ultimate horrifying fate of those who are absorbed by Area X, the biologist finally sits down by the swamp and opens the one specific journal she brought back from the massive pile in the lighthouse.
Her dead husband's journal.
Let's set the stage for why this matters so much. The biologist's husband was a medic on the 11th expedition. He had returned home to her a year before our biologist volunteered for the 12th.
But he didn't return as the man she married?
No. He just showed up in their kitchen one night out of nowhere, drinking milk from the fridge and eating leftovers, with absolutely no memory of how he crossed the border, how he got home, or what happened inside Area X.
He was a complete amnesiac.
He was a hollow shell of a person. And he, along with the rest of his crew, who mysteriously appeared back in the world, died of a very aggressive, very sudden cancer just a few months later.
When she reads his journal, it confirms that the 11th expedition broke down in almost the exact same violent manner as her own 12th expedition.
The same paranoia, the same splintering of the team, the same shootouts and suicides.
The environment actively breaks down human team cohesion, like a digestive acid breaking down complex proteins.
But the climax of his journal is where the true existential horror of Annihilation lies. He writes that after their team fractured, he and his surveyor were hiding in the dense trees outside the tower in the middle of the night.
And from their hiding spot,
They watched a procession of people walking out of the woods and heading down the spiral stairs into the earth. It was their entire team. The psychologist, the anthropologist,
but it also included a doppelganger of the husband.
and a doppelganger of his surveyor.
They watched themselves walk into the tower.
The husband writes in his journal, "It was so clearly not me, and yet it was me." They realize in that paralyzing moment that they are essentially ghosts.
The entity inside the tower had somehow created exact physical copies of them.
We have to dive into the philosophical nightmare of the ship of Theseus here.
Oh, absolutely. If Area X takes your biological material, maps your neural pathways, and perfectly reconstructs you cell by cell, why isn't that copy you?
What is the missing variable?
Exactly. If we think of Area X as a massive biological 3D printer, the only filament it has to work with is the DNA and the fragmented memories of the humans we keep sending in.
It is trying to print a human being.
Perfectly mimicking our form to send emissaries back across the border, but it doesn't understand the software. It doesn't understand the human soul or the spark of consciousness.
So the print comes out perfect on the outside, but entirely hollow on the inside.
Think about the devastating implications of that for the biologist.
Imagine your spouse comes home from a long trip or deployment. They look exactly like your spouse. They have the same voice, but there is a distance in their eyes, a terrifying hollowness.
And then, reading this journal in the swamp, you realize
The person who came home to your kitchen wasn't your husband at all. It was a bizarre, flawed, empty copy generated by an alien ecosystem. Your real husband died, or transformed into something unrecognizable out there in the swamp.
this revelation completely reframes the biologist's entire motivation for volunteering.
She didn't come to Area X to find her husband. She came to find out what made the thing that came back to her.
And she finds the undeniable proof of this terrifying mimicry under her own microscope.
The sample she took earlier.
Yes. Earlier in the expedition, she took biological samples from the ruined village, some strange green moss growing on a stone wall, and a patch of skin from a dead fox.
And when she looks at them,
When she looks at those samples under her high-powered lens, she makes a horrifying discovery. The moss and the fox are not plant or animal tissue. They are composed of highly modified, structurally altered human cells.
Area X is literally built out of the people who died there. The trees, the moss, the animals. It's all made of recycled human beings.
Yes. Think back to the scripture on the wall of the tower. Where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead.
It's literal.
The words on the wall are not poetry. They are a literal scientific description of the biological process. The crawler creates the environment using the DNA of previous expeditions.
The beautiful landscape is a mosaic of assimilated humanity.
The human explorers are the grit that the alien oyster uses to make its pearl.
Knowing this, armed with the crushing knowledge of her husband's fate, the horrifying truth of the clones, and the terrifying fact that the invisible border is expanding outward, the biologist knows there is only one place left to go.
She cannot go back to the border.
She cannot return to the Southern Reach. She must return to the tower. She has to face the crawler.
This final confrontation is the culmination of both her psychological and biological journey. She descends into the dark of the tower one last time, but significantly, she leaves all her weapons behind.
She brings no guns, no knives, just a flashlight, though she hardly even needs it because her own mutating body is glowing green so brightly she could see by her own light.
She walks past the rotting body of the anthropologist,
Which is now entirely covered in those tiny hand-shaped parasitic creatures. And she goes deeper down the spiral stairs than they ever dared before. And finally, at the bottom, she beholds the crawler.
VanderMeer's description of this entity is a masterclass in cosmic horror because he doesn't just describe a big monster.
No, it's way weirder than that.
He describes an entity that actively defies and breaks the human senses.
She says her eyes kept glancing off of it, unable to lock onto its shape. It is constantly violently shifting forms.
In 1 microsecond, it's a towering figure trapped within refracted panes of glass.
Then it's a series of glowing layers in an archway. Then it shifts into a great slug-like monster ringed by floating luminous tadpoles.
Then a blindingly bright star.
Then a wall of flesh that somehow resembles solid light. It is an organism so mathematically and biologically complex that looking at it literally breaks her optic nerves.
It is the manifestation of the sublime in the most terrifying, awe-inspiring sense.
It is so utterly alien, so far beyond human comprehension, that the brain simply cannot render an image of it without short-circuiting.
And the crawler doesn't just physically overwhelm her, it mounts a massive, intrusive psychic assault.
She is paralyzed. She feels an overwhelming sensation of drowning, awash in a crushing green-blue ocean.
And then she feels 100 invisible fingers probing and pressing down into her neck.
Punching up through the base of her skull and digging into her brain tissue, the crawler is scanning her. It is reading her biological and psychological code.
The text describes the sensation, "There shall be a fire that knows your name, and in the presence of the strangling fruit, its dark flame shall acquire every part of you."
She is in absolute skull-crushing, mind-shredding agony.
But then, at the peak of the horror, it simply stops.
It just stops. The pressure vanishes.
The crawler tosses her aside, throwing her physically down the stairs. It spares her. And we have to ask the critical question, why does the most powerful entity in Area X let her live?
Because she is already infected. She inhaled the golden spores on day 4. The brightness is already deep inside her nervous system.
She is already completely readable to the crawler.
She is already a part of the ecosystem, so the crawler realizes it doesn't need to break her down. She is one of them now.
Exactly. And in that terrifying moment of being scanned, of having her mind violently linked to the crawler, she has a sudden tragic revelation about the origin of the entity itself.
She remembers the photograph.
Yes, an old photograph she found hidden in the lighthouse, a picture of the original lighthouse keeper from 30 years ago, before the invisible border ever came down.
She realizes, looking at the vague, head-shaped shadow tracked within the shifting light of the crawler, that the crawler is the lighthouse keeper.
Or at least it's built around him. She theorizes that some alien thorn, some microscopic engine of assimilation from beyond the stars, struck the Earth 30 years ago.
And it grabbed the very first human it found.
The lonely lighthouse keeper. And it mutated him. It repurposed his biology, turning him into this massive, terrifying crawler, using his body as a fleshy printing press to write the genetic script on the walls, terraforming the landscape for 3 decades.
The lighthouse keeper was the very first piece of grit that made the alien pearl.
Which brings us to the biologist's final choice and the philosophical climax of our deep dive. The biologist survives the crawler. She climbs back out of the tower into the sunlight. She is battered, bruised, glowing green, and actively mutating. But she makes a profound, uniquely human decision.
She refuses to use the extraction protocol. She doesn't walk back to the border to report to the Southern Reach. Instead, she decides to stay in Area X.
She decides to follow the path her actual husband took years ago, heading up the untouched coast.
She accepts that she's transforming into something else, and she accepts that Area X is not necessarily evil. It is just utterly, completely alien.
As a scientist, as a true biologist, she undergoes a massive philosophical evolution.
She stops fighting it.
She stops looking at Area X as an enemy that needs to be fought with assault rifles, or a puzzle that needs to be solved with the Southern Reach's endless, futile paperwork. She surrenders her human ego and simply accepts Area X as a new, superior ecosystem.
So what does this all mean for us, for you, the listener, sitting in your car or your kitchen?
It's a lot to take in.
Imagine being in her shoes. Imagine willingly surrendering to the sublime, accepting the terrifying truth that human beings are no longer the top of the food chain, no longer the objective observers of the universe, but just a single fragile cell in a much larger, incomprehensible organism.
It is the ultimate peaceful surrender of the human ego.
Her final act before walking up the coast is to leave her journal, this very account we've been analyzing today, atop the rotting pile in the lighthouse.
It serves as both a grim warning to the inevitable next expedition and a strange, welcoming invitation.
Her final written words are, "I am the last casualty of both the 11th and the 12th expeditions. I am not returning home."
It's deeply haunting.
But before we go, she leaves us with one final, lingering, profoundly provocative thought. And this is something I really want you to mull over today.
We know that the invisible border of Area X is slowly expanding.
Right. But in her final journal entries, the biologist theorizes that it's not just a physical wall creaking forward. She believes Area X is already sending invisible emissaries out into our world right now.
Spores, flawed clones, modified glowing cells hiding quietly in forgotten empty spaces.
Exactly. She says they are hiding out there right now in overgrown, abandoned lots in the middle of our cities, or deep in the tidal pools along our coasts, quietly replicating.
Waiting.
So I ask you, next time you walk past an empty, weed-choked lot on your way to work, or you look really closely at the strange, bright green moss growing on a damp brick wall, how sure are you that the world you were looking at is still entirely human?
Are we already being assimilated cell by cell without even noticing that the terraforming has begun?
It is a terrifying question, and one that shifts how you look at the natural world around you. Thank you for joining us on this custom deep dive into the psychological and biological nightmares of annihilation. Remember, while the truth of the universe might be terrifying, and it might completely refuse to be neatly categorized in a notebook, understanding it, or at least accepting our fragile place within it, is the only way forward. Stay curious.